esteemed speakers with us. We have Sayyid Ali Al-Hakim, and we have Sheikh Abdul Jalil. We'll also have our own dear Hajj Kauthar, Sheikh Ahmed Mudarris joining us. So please do join us. The tickets are already available. So please reserve your spot. All the links are in the email and the flyer. Again, Saturday, January 24th. And without further ado, please help me in welcoming Hajj Kauthar Khan with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وأهل بيت طيبين الطاهرين In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise is due to Him. May peace and blessings be upon His Prophet, the seal of all messengers, the guidance to mankind. May peace and blessings be upon His pure and immaculate family. Please recite a loud salawat. I'm going to just talk for hopefully a few minutes, inshallah. We're starting a little earlier today, but hopefully I won't go over 20 minutes. I know everyone's tired. Actually, I promised my kids I wouldn't go over 20 minutes. So, Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I want to speak about a few hadith just so we can reflect on it. We're in this month of Rajab, and some of the important aspects of this month, the month of Rajab. As you all know, the month of Rajab is a month that is an introduction to the spiritual journey that we take. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has every year prepared us, allowed us to learn about the spiritual journey. What is the spiritual journey? If you want to take many of the hadith and look at them, the spiritual journey is to learn taqwa. Very simple. It's a simple sentence in the Quran, very difficult thing to do, but it's to learn taqwa. This journey of taqwa in this year, it culminates in Shahrul Ramadan. Okay? As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that in order for you to practice taqwa in the month of Ramadan. It's not so that we magically get taqwa. We don't just go to Ramadan and we just say, oh, I have taqwa. It's Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I have taqwa and I'm here, so I must have taqwa because I'm fasting. It's so that we would learn, if we were to have taqwa, how would it be like? How would it be like to control our desires? How would it be like to control our nafs? How would it be like to control our eyes, to control our ears? Now, we live in a society generally, a society of hedonism, where there is no restraint or there is no promotion of taqwa. When you live in a society of absolute freedom, naturally, when that exists everywhere, there is temptation everywhere. So having taqwa sometimes in these societies is very difficult, because there is a constant reminder to have taqwa. Okay? Now, before we get to Shahrul Ramadan, we're told that the introduction to that is the month of Rajab. Now, Rajab has, and this is spoken about by mystics, by scholars of akhlaq, it is in hadith, it is in, just intellectually we understand this, that the month of Rajab has many spiritual benefits and mysteries to it. Okay? So before we get to Shahrul Ramadan, we have 1 month of Rajab, which is the introduction, then Sha'ban, then Shahrul Ramadan. But by Shahrul Ramadan, much of the change we should be ready for. Okay? Many times we get to Shahr Ramadan and we're like, Shahr Ramadan is is boring. I just got to fast and get this over with. But it is because many times that we didn't prepare ourselves in the month of Rajab or in the month of Sha'ban. So we miss the opportunity in the month of Rajab. If we miss it, then surely we will most likely miss it in Shahrul Ramadan. It is impossible to get to somewhere, not prepare for it, and then expect to pass that test or learn from that. So before we go to a class, before we go to anything, if we don't review those materials, when we get to that class, the class is going to seem very hard. For those of you who remember going to a class or going to school, but if you go anywhere and you don't prepare for that exercise, whether it's physical exercise, intellectual exercise, this is a spiritual exercise. This is an exercise of the heart, and it's an exercise of the mind. It's an exercise of stillness. It's an exercise to stop. It's an exercise to slow down. It's an exercise to pause. It's an exercise to think of your Lord. That is a hard exercise. If we do not begin that in the month of Rajab, by the time we get to Shahr Ramadan, Ramadan is just too difficult. Then Ramadan, Shahr Ramadan becomes that place where you go to that classroom or you go to that workout or you go to that place and you say, oh, I can't wait to get this thing over with. When is Eid? When is it? When do I get the potluck? So there are these spiritual things that happen in Rajab that we're told. And a matter of fact, it's very interesting when we read some of these books that mystics have written. Many times, if we're spiritual enough, we don't even think that we have that spirituality. We will find that out in the month of Rajab. Something inside of us will come out. So if we let this month go by and we think, sometimes we always reduce things to, oh, it's mustahab to fast in Rajab. Yes, it's mustahab. Why is it mustahab to fast? Mustahab is a legal term. It's what the fuqaha use to describe something that's highly recommended. Okay, it's highly recommended. That sounds great. But what is highly recommended? What they're trying to express to us is that spiritual miracles happen in Rajab. Things you will find inside yourself you did not find in Muharram and Safar and Rabi al-Awwal and Rabi al-Akhir. All of those months, you couldn't find them. You were struggling. You get to the month of Rajab and something happens. And this is why Rajab is very important. If we worked during the year and we made that struggle and we made it in this life to the month of Rajab, something can shift. Don't let it pass by. So many times people came to the imams and they said, we are in the month of Rajab, should we, but I didn't fast. It's almost the end of Rajab. The imam said, go fast just one day fast. Because you're going to get benefit from this. More benefit than you can imagine. Even if a few days are left, just fast on those days. Whatever you can do, even if you fast one day, God will promise you Jannah. Just one day. So Rajab is that preparation of the soul that we have to take if we want the sweetness of Shahr Ramadan. If we don't take that, then Ramadan becomes tedious. It becomes difficult. Now, the question is okay, should we fast? Yes, it's been highly recommended that we fast, at least if we can fast one day in Rajab. But more than that, Rajab becomes a time of contemplation. It becomes a time of beginning to ask ourselves, doing that muhasabah, beginning to ask ourselves, not just what we did, but who we are. Okay, I'm going to explain this in a hadith in just a moment. Who we are. Now, one of the things that has been mentioned in this month to pay attention to very specifically in this month is to pay attention to God's mercy. To notice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have hope in His mercy in this particular month. To notice His mercy in this month. Now, we have a hadith of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Please recite a salawat. There is a hadith of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that says that a mu'min is not a mu'min unless he has hope in God's mercy. It is the defining characteristic of a mu'min. That you would have hope that God would bestow the best khair on you in this month and throughout our lives. Now we'll talk about what khair is. Khair is not always what we imagine it to be. Many times, I hear people say this. People are talking about an issue and they'll say, well, khair inshallah. And I said, what did you mean by khair inshallah? They'll say, oh, well, inshallah, it turns out to be good. I said, that's not what khair means. It doesn't mean that the event will turn out to be pleasing to us. The event may end up turning out to be horrible for us. But in that horrible event, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive us. It could be a very difficult situation that Allah puts us in, but in that, He forgives us. This is why Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, we have a tradition that he says that the believer, the servant of God, should always pray that khair is if that Allah puts you in a difficulty, that you pray that you do not sin in that difficulty. That Allah may put us in a difficulty. We may have a particular hardship. But we pray that, oh God, if you give me this hardship, you give me this difficulty, that I don't sin. As difficult as it is, I don't break any particular rule that you wanted. I don't break my akhlaq, my normal akhlaq that I should have. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That in order that you practice taqwa. Now what is taqwa? Taqwa is ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ الذين يؤمنون. Come on, you guys know Quran better than me. الذين يؤمنون بالغيب. الذين يؤمنون بالغيب. That's the first criteria of taqwa. That you believe in what? You believe in the unseen. If you ask anybody what is the unseen, oh yeah, you believe in Allah. But believe He's what? That we believe in God's mercy. That we have hope. It is compulsory on the believer to have hope. Now I want to read a hadith for you, a few hadith here very quickly. Recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now there's a tradition by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, by Imam Baqir alayhi salam. And this hope is very difficult. It's one of the most difficult things as a believer to keep. This is why the Imams have talked about this, right? Because hope's not something that you just have. We always think of, a person has hope in God. I don't know anybody hope is not something that it's an object that you contain, that you just have. Hope is something that you go up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Right? But you want it to be that graph. You know those stock market graphs? They go up and down, but they keep going up. Okay, you don't want it to go up and down, but down. You want it to just, it can go up and down a little bit, but it keeps going up higher and higher and higher. We have more and more hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now the believer is always tested. The purpose of this life is that the believer would be tested and that the believer would not lose their hope in God. Now, this is one of the things that Rajab teaches us. It's one of the things we have to pay special attention to. Now, this hadith I want to give you. And many people, when they talk about hope in this static way, please recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad before I recite this. So there's this tradition of Imam Baqir. He says that Allah took a mithaq, a covenant from a believer. Now when we talk about hope, hope is tested with the difficulty we have in life. Right? People always ask, well, how can I have hope in God? I have this going on in my life. I have that going on in my life. I have problems at home. I have problems with my spouse. I have problems with my kids. I have problems at work. I have problems here. I have problems there. It's actually the test of the believer to have those problems and have this hope. So the Imam says this. There are two hadith here, and this is in Kitab al-Mu'min. He says that Allah has taken a covenant from a believer, a mithaq. Now, where does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take a mithaq, a covenant from us? He doesn't take it in this world. There's no time we remember promising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala something. It was taken before this world. It was taken in a place called Alam-e-Dhar. Before we came into this dunya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took a covenant from us. In Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks, He asks us there, before we come in here, He says, Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? And He takes a covenant from us. And that covenant is to come into this dunya. But with this dunya, we are informed that we would face a lot of difficulties. And so the test is this. You come into this dunya. You come in, you come in, you come in. We were assembled just like this. Millions and millions of people were assembled. You're going to go into this dunya. Do you accept this covenant? Do you accept this agreement with me? Am I not your Lord? Alastu bi rabbikum? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked. We said yes. You will go into this dunya. Do you accept this? Okay, I can go into this dunya, but with one condition. It's going to be difficult, extremely difficult. You will be tested, you will be tried. You may have family problems, work problems, you may have money problems. But you will go into this dunya, you will be tested with all of that, and you will still have to believe in me. You will still have to have hope in me. Now, this hadith of the Imam says that Allah took a covenant from the believer that He would bother him with 4 types of afflictions. So if a person is a mu'min, if they're a believer, you signed up for it. So that's what I'm trying to say. We all signed up for it. I didn't sign up for your affliction. You signed up for your affliction. The fact that you're in this dunya means you signed up to come in this dunya. By the way, Allah didn't force us to come in this dunya. He asked us, do you want to come in this dunya? We agreed at that time. And we accepted faith at that time. And then we come into this dunya and then we're tested in this dunya. But He says they took from the believer, from the mu'min, from the one who believes, who commits to believe, there are 4 types of afflictions. He says the first and the easiest of these is a fellow believer who envies him or her. You know, sometimes I hear this from people. People are always like, I hear this a little bit more on the women's side than the men's side. Just a little bit. But I hear, oh, this person's jealous of me. That person's jealous of me. The first type of affliction is that a fellow believer who envies him or her. This is an affliction. Someone who is jealous. Okay? Doesn't matter if it's another believer. It's an affliction. We have something, somebody else is envious of it. We desire something, somebody else wants it. 2, the second is a hypocrite who follows them. Somebody who is two-faced and who follows the person and who is trying to be with them all the time. Okay, this is the second thing. Third is a devil who tries to tempt him and mislead him or her. So this is a devil. You know, shaitan has many children. There are many shayateen. And sometimes there are shayateen in this world that are there for the believer, to test the believer. So the believer is constantly tested with this. So sometimes we ask, well, why am I tested? Why do I have this thing? Why do I have these thoughts? Why do I have this particular desire? Because it is a covenant that the believer took, that he would come into this world with. And the fourth is an infidel, or someone who disbelieves in God, from who he felt safe, but who will fight him. It's a very interesting one. Is a person who is an infidel, who is a disbeliever, who he felt safe from. The believer felt safe with this person, but then he finds that this person is all of a sudden this person is against him. These are 4 afflictions that the believer, that we signed up for, we took the covenant for. Okay? I want to read you one other hadith before we wrap up. Okay. It's a tradition from Imam Sadiq, alayhi salam. He says that a believer never escapes one of these 3 problems in this dunya. If not all 3. If he doesn't get all 3 of these, he'll at least get one of these. So now, there's always in a hadith, I want to say something. In hadith, there is a concept that the Imams have talked about, and this concept is called afat. It's a concept, it means a bane. This means that everything has the opposite of something. It means that, for instance, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, the bane or the bad side of leadership is that people would disobey you. Okay? There is always a bad side to everything that is even good in this dunya. It's always a bad side to it. Okay? Because that's the nature of this dunya. The nature of this dunya is that if there's something good, there's always going to be an alternate to it. There's going to be the opposite to it. There's going to be a bad side to it. There's something that's going to come along with it that's bad. Even a believer, even belief. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you belief, there are going to be tribulations that come with it. It's not that belief comes for free. There's nothing in this dunya that's good that comes for free. Nothing. There's always going to be something that comes along with it that's not necessarily good, because it's the nature of this dunya. But in this hadith, the Imam says that, he says there are 3 afflictions, and a believer always has at least one of them. He says the first one is a family member who shuts him or her out. Now I want you to listen to this very, very carefully. It's a test of a believer. This is by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. A family member who doesn't speak to you anymore, sometimes we get. A family member who doesn't want to talk to you. A family member who ignores you. You may do everything. You may say, okay, I'm going to be a believer. I'll reach out to them. I'll text them. I'll phone them. I'll call them. I'll communicate with them. I'll do salat raham. I'll do everything because I've been commanded to. Still nothing. Say, I've done everything I can. They just, what's wrong with this? They won't, I don't know, something's wrong. They won't talk to me. They won't speak to me. They've shut me out of their life. Okay, sometimes this puzzles us. We don't understand this. And then we don't understand why this is happening to me. Why is it that this tribulation, because the most difficult tribulation is the tribulation of family. The most difficult tribulation. You can lose money, you can lose time, you can lose your health, you can lose everything, but when you lose your family, it's like losing your soul sometimes. Now, sometimes this happens with children. Children abandon their parents. Okay, in this society, this is a trend. I don't have time to talk about this now. Sometimes it'll happen with a sibling. Sometimes it'll happen with a parent. Okay, sometimes even a child does everything they can for the parent. But the parent is obstinate, stubborn, lacks forgiveness. Okay, and there's punishments for this also. It's not permissible. Yes, in Islam it says that a parent's pleasure is obligatory. We should not go out of our way to displease a parent. But it doesn't mean that a parent can just be stubborn and jahil. It doesn't mean that. A parent must forgive. We have a hadith that says, by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, that says that remember the one above you forgives you, so you forgive the one below you. What does that mean? That means anyone you have control over, anyone you have power over, if this is a wife, if this is a child, if this is anybody, you have power over them. You have financial power over them, you have physical power over them, you have something over them. If you expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have hope in His forgiveness, then forgive that one beneath you. In any case, let's continue with this hadith. He says that the believer will have, it is inevitable that a believer will have a family member that blocks them out. Or two, a neighbor who troubles them. They will have we have all these hadith, I've talked about it before, about neighbors and the rights of a neighbor and knowing a neighbor and giving to a neighbor and the haqq of a neighbor. But, you know, I remember we were in the old place. You all remember we were in the old place in Santa Ana. Oh my God, I remember. I'll tell you a little story, okay? This community went through this whole journey to get this place. When we were in that place, the old place, we were doing all that construction, and I'm not going to mention, there's some people here, some brothers here who helped us with that. They went through this journey with us. I won't mention their name because the person that's here, they know who they are. They helped us out at Yasin a huge amount. We had problems with the city, okay? Huge problems with the city. And when we were going through these problems, I remember the inspector called me, the city inspector called me. I spoke to him directly. He called me and he says, yeah, we're coming over. We need to see your place. You have this violation, this violation, this violation, this violation. I said, how do you know we have these violations? We opened like a month ago. He said, he got quiet and he said, oh, well, you know, one of your neighbors called. I said, how did our neighbor call? Our neighbor's never even been inside our building. He said, I don't know. Your neighbor said that you're doing this and you're doing that there and so this neighbor would constantly complain about us. Constantly. He would call the city. Or they're violating this code. He would call the city again. They're violating this. They're doing this. They're doing that. Many people don't know the struggle that the board went through. Why we moved Sunday school from that place to a school? We had huge problems because somebody complained. So anyways, my point is, I don't want to vent over what happened in the past. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that was a blessing. It was a blessing. But now we can see that was a blessing. Okay? But that person did all of this. And I remember the board, someone from the board called me and they said, you know, this is happening, this guy's doing this. And I was just like, okay, all right. you know. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends this to believers. Inshallah, we're believers. But sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends this. It's okay. Sometimes you will get a neighbor, an irrational neighbor. Somebody who just wants to fight. Somebody who just wants to complain. Someone who just wants to be angry. So the Imam is telling us that it's natural to get this. Or a person that he meets at their work, okay? Wherever they do work. So as a believer will be tested with one of these three things. Now, why do we get tested with one of these things? There's a tradition of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He was asked, a companion came to the Imam and says, is it because that the believer sins? And the Imam says, no, it's not absolutely because the believer is sinning. If you have some difficulty in your life, it's not because you say, oh, I have this difficulty, I must have sinned. Then the Imam says that sometimes the believer gets this difficulty because, yes, it could be that Allah wants to clear his or her deck. He wants to remove any sin that they had, or two, Allah wants to give them khair in the hereafter. Sometimes Allah wants to give us something good there. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this thing. Now, what's the point of all this? The point of all this is that when Allah gives us these things, it is to teach us hope. It is to teach us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is having mercy on us. And this mercy extends to a believer all the way till their death. As the Imam says that when Allah gives mercy to the believer, He will test him first with his health. And maybe that doesn't give the believer enough khair, enough goodness in the hereafter. Then He will test him with his wealth. And maybe still He tests the believer and that doesn't give him enough khair. It will go all the way that Allah will test him with a difficult death. And if the believer, even if he has a difficult death, and that doesn't give him enough khair in the hereafter, Allah will then test him with a difficult funeral or burial till everything from that believer is removed and he goes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with nothing bad. No shar, nothing. So I promise you guys 20 minutes. We'll end at that. So this month of Rajab, it's so very important that we have hope that Allah will change something in us. It is important to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, and a simple exercise, practical thing we can do. Remember every single time we did not have mercy on somebody else. That's it. That's all I'm going to give you. If we do that, do tafakkur, every time we lost our temper and did not have mercy on somebody else, this will indicate to us what we need to change in the month of Rajab. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shower His mercy upon this community and all believers around the world, to forgive our marhumeen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to change in the month of Rajab, Sha'ban, and Shahrul Ramadan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to change our akhlaq so that we are presentable if He chooses us to be in the company of Sahib al-Zaman. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi tahirin.